Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be sharing my belated April wrap-up with you. So I haven't had a lot of time for filming lately. Things at my job have been super crazy while we are gearing up to try to get ready to go back into the office. So working from home is coming to an end, which is kind of bittersweet. I think it's going to be like really nice to be back in the office, but then also I'm definitely going to miss being home. So that's going to be an adjustment. But I have lots of stuff going on at work, and then Andrew and I got our second dose of the vaccine, so I didn't really feel like filming that weekend. We were thankfully both really lucky and didn't have any side effects. Like our arms were sore and we were just a bit tired, but otherwise we were fine. But I still like wasn't in the mood to film. And then Mother's Day I spent with my dad, and now it's the middle of the week, and now that we are fully vaccinated, have been trying to plan trips to see family and catch up with like family that we haven't gotten to see in a really long time. So things are going to be a little bit crazy. My filming schedule is going to be a little all over the place, and I might only be posting like one video a week if I'm able to. But I'm gonna try my best, so just bear with me. But anyway, moving on to the books that I read in April, I feel like I had a really great reading month. Like, it would be really tough to try to rank these books in favorite order because I loved so many of them. There was like one? Is it only one book? Yeah. There's really only like one book that I didn't care for, and then the rest of the books that I read I like really enjoyed. So I think I will start off on the low note and then talk about all of the excellent things that I read. Okay. Okay, so the book that I did not enjoy this month was The Lady Upstairs by Hallie Sutton. This is a thriller novel, but I would not call it a thriller novel. There was nothing in this novel that was like even the slightest bit thrilling. I thought it was super boring, and I've talked about this book a couple times because I was really looking forward to reading it. We're following a character who works for a woman upstairs, and they are in the LA area, and they are basically like blackmailing men in power and taking down men who are bad but have power. It was not interesting at all. I considered DNFing it a couple of times, but I usually try to give thrillers a little bit of a chance because sometimes they can take a little while to kind of find their groove or like get to that really exciting point, and that just never happened in this one. But by the time I was like 3/4 of the way through it, I was like, well, I may as well finish it. But I didn't like it. I saw the twist coming. I wouldn't even call it a twist, and it was kind of a waste of my time personally. Yeah, not a favorite. I gave this one 2 stars. Next, I read Fable by Adrienne Young. This is the first book in the Fable duology, so I read this one, and then while I was in the middle of reading it, I immediately ordered Namesake, and I'm really looking forward to reading that one too. I thought this book was a lot of fun. I've been struggling a lot with YA fantasy, so I was surprised that I enjoyed this book as much as I did. But I thought that Fable was a really great character, and I love seafaring adventures. This book was really just like one big fun sea adventure. Even though it's a YA fantasy, I would say that there's really no fantasy at all in this book. I can see a potential area where maybe it'll be a little bit fantastical in the second book, but I can't imagine that there's going to be like much magic. It definitely seems like it's more just fantasy because of the like kind of piratey aspect. But I thought it was really fun, really quick paced, and it really held my interest the entire time that I was reading it. Very much looking forward to reading the conclusion, and I'm really excited that I have like a new YA fantasy book that I actually enjoyed, because I thought that I wasn't going to ever enjoy one again, but here we are. So I liked this one a lot, and I gave it like 3.5 stars. Moving on to Unlocked, which is the 8.5 book in the Keeper of the Lost City series. I really enjoyed this one. A lot of the beginning is encyclopedic, so it looks quite long, but the beginning is all information that we already know, though some of it is conveyed in a fun way. There are different like files on students. There are certain characters that have broken into those files and made their own annotations and edits, and that was really fun. You learn a lot about the world of Keeper of the Lost Cities, which if you've read the books so far, you would kind of already know everything, but it was still just like a fun refresher and just enjoyable because I really love this series. Then we had a very short novella, which was the last like 200 pages, I want to say, and so good, but obviously really wanted more because I can never get enough of these books. I cannot wait for the next book in the series. I can't wait to find out if the next book is going to be the last book or if Shannon Messenger is going to decide that she needs to write a 10th book too. Either way, I will be here for it, but I'm just really hoping that we'll get an installment this year. I've been talking about the series on my channel for quite a while now, and if you haven't picked it up yet, I just highly recommend doing so. It's a middle grade fantasy series. It is excellent, and I'm just completely enamored with this entire series. It's so good. This I ended up giving 4 stars. I feel like I said I couldn't rank these, but now as I'm pulling them, I'm like kind of trying to rank them. I did really enjoy so many of the books that I read this month. Next, I have The X-Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This was another one that I really loved. This was a romance that was on my most anticipated list of the year. It follows 2 characters who are rivals that work at a public radio station, and the station is kind of going under. So one of them has the idea for this new show where exes give relationship advice, and they decide that the 2 coworkers who dislike each other should be the hosts of the show, even though they've never dated. So they need to convince the public that they had been dating at one point and now they're not dating anymore. But as they get to know each other, they do start falling in love, and it is so adorable. I really loved it. I thought like all of the banter was so good. I loved both of the characters. I really liked their relationship. I thought it was super cute. I think like the first 90% of the book, I was like, this is getting 5 stars. This is so good. And then I just felt like it wrapped up a little bit quickly. Like the ending was a little bit abrupt, and I didn't super love the way that the conflict was resolved. I am overall still happy with it, and I like loved the beginning so much that the ending didn't really affect my rating too much, but I ended up giving it 4 stars instead of the full 5 that I was expecting. Then I read Kim Ji-young, born 1982, and this was so unexpectedly interesting. This is a short book. It was longlisted for the National Book Award, and I find that I've really been enjoying translated fiction lately, so I wanted to give this one a shot. I picked it up when I was in a physical bookstore, which was so nice, and I ended up starting to read it like the day after I purchased it, which is also something that's nice because sometimes books can sit on my TBR for a little while, but you can tell I was excited about it because I picked it up right away. This is basically a character study, so this book really examines the misogyny and the way that women are really undervalued in South Korea. In this book, we're following one character, Kim Ji-young, and we go through her entire life from when she's born through adulthood, and she seems to have like gone a little bit off the rails. Her husband is a little bit worried about her, doesn't think that she's really like the same woman that he fell in love with, and ends up feeling like he needs to bring her to an institution and get her evaluated. So we are following like the trajectory of her entire life from when she was born until that point. It's so fascinating just to see all of like the very different scenarios that she's in, ranging from like very small slights all the way up to just like blatant misogyny, and you completely feel for her character and understand how she's gotten to this point. And then the ending of the book is infuriating, and it's supposed to be. Like, it did its job. Like, I left this feeling really angry, and I can completely understand how this book kind of sparked a feminist revolution in South Korea, because I was just feeling so much rage, but I really liked it. I really like books that can make me feel things, and this really like got a very, very strong reaction from me. This one I gave 4.5 stars. Then I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and I loved this book too. This is another piece of translated fiction, but this is translated from Japanese. And in this book, we kind of have like a series of somewhat interconnected short stories where we're following a bunch of characters who are in this cafe that is known for people having the ability to time travel, but there are like very specific rules in order to be able to time travel. So you can only go to the past. You can only visit somebody who was also in the cafe with you at one point in your life. You have to sit in a very specific seat, and you have to finish before your coffee gets cold. Otherwise, something's gonna happen. You find out what could happen, but it was so good. In the beginning, I was not really sure how I was going to feel about it because the writing is very simplistic and I felt like a lot of things were just kind of spelled out. There wasn't much that was left to like the reader to kind of like interpret, but then some of the stories just got me. Like I cried, like sobbed during 2 of the short stories, which I was not expecting. And I've definitely been thinking about this book like ever since I read it and just like thinking about those particular stories. One of them especially hit very close to home. It was so good. Oh my gosh, I just loved it. And I know that there's a sequel. I've heard that it is not as good as the original book, so I'm kind of on the fence about whether I want to read that or not. I just really wasn't expecting this book to make me feel as much as I did, but it really did, and I'm so glad that I read it. I really, really loved it. And this one I gave 4.5 stars. Then I read another middle grade book. So I think this might have actually been the first book that I read in April. I'm like, what month are we in now? I don't even know. This is a middle grade story following Eva Evergreen, who is a semi-magical witch. She's the daughter of a very powerful witch, so a lot of people have very high expectations for her, but she really only has a very little bit of magic, and she is going on, like, she's leaving home and like going on her little quest to try to prove herself and like prove that she should be inducted into like the next step of the witch hierarchy. I can't remember the exact terminology, but that's like essentially what's happening. It has major Kiki's Delivery Service vibes, but it's definitely its own thing. I just thought it was so delightful. It was really Studio Ghibli-esque. There is this adorable little animal that is like basically her familiar, and it looks like an Eevee, and I love it. It was seriously just so fun, so wholesome, so lovely. It was basically like reading a Studio Ghibli film. It was so feel good, and I really like needed that. I loved it. It was so great. I immediately pre-ordered the sequel to this one. I cannot wait to read it when that comes out, but if you like witchy things and if you like wholesome books, this is 100% one to check out, and this one I gave 4.5 stars as well. All right, down to the last 2 books. I read Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. I am obsessed with this book. It was so good. I have been wanting to read it for so long, and I'm so glad that I finally pulled it off my shelf because it was fantastic. I'm sure that a lot of people like already know what this is about because it's been very widely talked about, but I just want to reaffirm that it is totally worth reading. It really sucks you in. And okay, so we're basically following 2 characters. One of them is a nanny and the other one is the mother that employs the nanny. And basically what happens is there's like a bad situation that happens in the beginning. So the family calls the nanny on a Saturday night, late at night, and asks her if she can come and pick up their child and take her out of the house because they don't want her to be there when the police come. So the nanny explains that it's a Saturday night. She's been out. She doesn't really look like a babysitter right now. And the family is like, well, we don't care. Just like, we'll pay you extra. Just like, please take her. So she's like, okay, sure. So she takes the little girl to the grocery store. And then while she's there, she gets accused of like kidnapping the girl. The guard doesn't believe that she is the babysitter and they want to get the police involved. But after a little while, she's able to diffuse the situation by getting in touch with the father of the child, who comes down and tells the security guard, like, yes, she is our babysitter, whole deal. And it ends up being a whole thing. Like, it's a really bad experience for her. She's not feeling great about it. She doesn't want people to know about it. And basically the rest of the book is about all of her different interactions with white people who feel like they have her best interest at heart, but are not at all listening to what it is that she actually wants. So it's really interesting because it examines white saviors and false allies, and I thought it was just done so well. I felt so much for Amira Sarah, like she's just trying to live her life and like make the best choices for herself, and she has all of these people like trying to intervene and try to convince her that they know better than she does about her own life. So it's really like frustrating, but really interesting, so digestible. Like I could not put this book down. I really, really loved it, and I gave this one 5 stars. And then the last book that I have to talk about is I Am C-3PO by Anthony Daniels. I actually was lucky enough to get the audiobook version of this from my library, which was amazing because I loved hearing Anthony Daniels tell his story in his own words. When I had looked for it in the past, it wasn't available on audio, but they must have like just gotten a copy recently at my library, and I'm so glad that they did because it was delightful. C-3PO has always been my favorite droid within the entirety of the Star Wars universe. This book just like made me love him even more, and I hadn't realized like all that Anthony Daniels went through, especially like with the first trilogy of films. Like they didn't want to break the illusion that C-3PO was like a robot. So Anthony Daniels like barely ever got credit for the work that he did as C-3PO, which is so unfortunate because he's so talented. But he is the only person to have been in every single Star Wars movie ever made, which is really awesome. And he basically just told like tales from all of the sets, his experience doing Star Wars, his experience with all of the cast members in Star Wars, and like press events that he has done. And it was just like, as someone who is a lifelong Star Wars fan, it was great. It was just so great. The introduction of the book is written by J.J. Abrams, who also read his portion for the audiobook, and he talks about how Anthony was so against C-3PO having a red arm, and that was really funny. And then getting to hear Anthony talk about it too was just like really hilarious. But he definitely had a very tough time being C-3PO, and they really didn't put any effort into creating technology to make his job any easier for him, and he had to like weather all of these different scenes in like extreme heat and have like suit malfunctions, and this poor man. But it was just so much fun. Like I just really liked hearing his take on everything. So this was also obviously a 5-star read for me. So I read 9 books in April. I was really happy with that because, like I said, I really enjoyed everything that I read except for that one book. Otherwise, everything was really good, which I'm very grateful for. And so far, I'm having a pretty good reading month in May too. Oh, the only other thing that I didn't mention is that I did start reading Shadow Rising, which is the 4th Wheel of Time book, but I'm nowhere near finished, so I'm continuing to read it this month. I honestly don't even know if I'll finish it in May. I just am like slowly making progress on it, and I am really enjoying it. It's definitely like kind of slow going because I'm getting distracted by other things, as you can see. So those are all the books that I read this month. Let me know what your favorite thing that you read in April was, and let me know something that you are excited to read in May. I'm not going to do a May TBR video because we're already like a third of the way into May, so I feel like it just doesn't make sense at this point. But I would love to hear what you guys are reading, because I usually ask that in my May video, so let me know here. That's all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!